Welcome to New Realities. My name is Alan Steinfeld, and this is our weekly series of what we've been calling the ET Roundtable, where we really look at a lot of different aspects of the ET phenomena. So tonight, I'm very happy to be talking to Kim Black, who is an amazing artist and really got sucked into the ET world, I guess, and gave up being an artist. And I just want to say I'm also joined by my friends and co-conspirators, I suppose, not real conspiracy, but Steve Spear, David Metcalf. Usually Henrietta Weekes is here. She can't make it this week, but Kim, thanks for being here. And I also want to mention my book, Making Contact, which you read, right, Kim?
Loved it. Yeah. And also loved your coast to coast presentation. It was great.
Good. We're speaking the same language. You look
absolutely. Yes.
You seem to be a little frozen on your video screen there.
Yeah, so are you actually. And
oh, really? Well, anyway, let's go. It's okay. We can see you, but let's go. Oh, now you're unfrozen. I guess that happens when you're talking to ETs. But tell us a little bit about your story. You were sort of a normal, maybe not normal, but an artist, a great career as an artist, really a really excellent illustrator and creator. What happened to you? Where did it all go up in smoke in a way?
Yeah, I don't know if I was ever normal, but
right.
Back in the 90s, I was pretty successful. I'm not saying I was getting rich, but I was making a living doing my art. And I had representation in San Diego and New York and sold out my shows every year.
Mm-hmm.
And I was obsessed. I mean, art was my life. And I was right in the middle of that. And
what kind of art was it? I mean, you showed us some of your recent stuff, but what kind of images were you doing?
Mostly nudes, conceptual nudes.
Oh, conceptual.
Conceptual nudes. Yeah, and portraits as well. I actually perhaps the background of how I got into art would be appropriate as well.
Yeah,
because it ties into I think why this one experience happened and which threw me off course. I mean, after that, I couldn't think of anything else. Wow. About a year. But
so what was the background in art then that you?
Well, I got to say, I don't think that I always wanted to be an artist ever since I was young, as far as back as I can remember. And I didn't have the talent for it. I have to be honest about that. Mm-hmm. My brother and my father inherited the talent in the family. So I always admired their work, but I did love to do it. So I'd lock myself in the room and just draw. And mainly I drew my dreams. That was the thing that I did. I worked on the most. And the thing I was really dreaming was the thing that really not controlled my life, but it was such a big part of my life. My dream world, even when I was little, was more real than, waking life. And I just couldn't wait to get to sleep. The possibilities were endless. And I think I was kind of a natural lucid dreamer, although when I was younger, I couldn't control my dreams, but I did know that I was awake in the dream, and so it was always fascinating to me. So I couldn't wait to get to sleep, and sleeping was really easy for me. Later on, I started doing dream work and actually working on certain things within a dream, and also trying to stay awake from waking to falling asleep. That was one of my big things I tried to do, because it was so easy for me to fall asleep. Difficult, but I just wanted to stay conscious within the dream. That was my main goal there. And I think what that actually contributed to OBE experiences, out of body experiences, because I started having these regularly. First, it was like every day. And I think now they call them sleep paralysis. you know.
Well, I think sleep paralysis is a bad name for it. I think
I
they
do
call it
too. Yeah.
lucid dreaming. But you know, it is really interesting you've said that, because in my experiences, these ETs exist in a sort of dreamlike world. So maybe that practice has made you more open to interfacing with these beings.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. That's what I was getting to. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah. I think that's what the reason it happened, actually. The main experience I'll get to, the contact experience on board this ship. But
right.
uh, so,
Mhm.
I was actually, it's hard for me to verbalize things that experience for me. That's why I'm an artist, because I use my art to communicate. But one night I actually had an experience. It wasn't. No one can tell me that it was a dream. I know what dreams are. I know what out of body experiences are, and I know what lucid dreaming is. And so this experience was not a dream. And um, even when I was in it, I didn't think it was a dream. I just thought it was where I was. But anyway, I found myself on board a ship, and I can't really say it was a ship in a sense, because um, I don't know if it was up there, down there, or here.
But let
So
me
it
just
was.
ask you one question before you go into the. Were you into UFOs, ETs at all? Was that on your radar to any degree at all?
I had some experience. I did some illustrations actually for a book. I was hired to do some work for Craig Campobasso. I don't know if you know Craig. Autobiography of an extraterrestrial. But I wasn't really like into ETs. You know, as a matter of fact, when he talked about it, I thought he was a little, little out there. And come to find out, he was right about a lot of things. The only thing I can really say about that is that when I was younger, um, I used to always go out in the backyard and shine a light and watch the beam go straight up. And I was hoping that it would continue to go up and reach those who dropped me off and come get me. And that was when I was real little. So I constantly did that. So that's the only thing I can kind of recall having any ET interest. So this thing came out of the blue. It's not what I wanted. I was really happy doing what I was doing.
So one
Um,
night, how long? How many years back was this dream like thing?
yeah, yeah, this was in the 90s, back in the 90s.
Okay.
And and at the time, I didn't know anything about the origins of man, or where we come from, or sacred texts, or history, or any of that.
Mhm.
All I knew was when this happened, I had to find out what it was and what was going on. Um, it wasn't giving me a lot of answers. It was only giving me experience. And I think that was by design, actually, because I was supposed to find out a lot of things on my own. As we know, humans need to experience to really have it, logged into their consciousness. So the experience on board the ship just created a lot of questions for me, a lot of questions.
So what happened? You were sort of sleeping, and then yeah, describe what happened to you to get on board the ship, or did you just find yourself there?
I just found myself there. That's why I thought it was something else, because didn't remember falling asleep. All of a sudden, I was there. So,
And can you
um,
describe the ship that you were on? I mean, did you
sure,
see
yeah,
details? Because you're a real detailed sort of guy. So what did you see?
yeah. The room itself was. It's interesting because the room itself was devoid of any hard edges. It was, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
Or no right angles. It was no really color involved, just gradations of whiteness, you might say. And there was a table there. It was an egg-shaped table, and there were beings sitting around the table, and they all looked similar, humanoid in appearance. They were wearing robes. They had a insignia on their chest, and I had a gentleman to my right it was all telepathic, of course. And I had a gentleman help me on my right, telling me what was going on. It was an important meeting. And from what I gathered, the meeting concerned the Earth and humanity, that they're very concerned about it. At the point of the egg-shaped table was, one thing I want to mention too is the beings were, they had different transparencies. You know, some were more kind of luminous than the others. But the being at the head of the table was so bright, I could only see the outline of the figure. And he kind of lit up the whole room. And I say he because I'm not sure if that's the correct way to say it, because it's beyond sex, this being. And so they just had a procedure they're going through. They had tablets in front of them. There were gray tablets, very thick pages, and they had hieroglyphics on them. At the time, I was trying to take in as much as I could because I know I was in a place that I was going to be popped out of any time because I was popped in it so quick. So I wanted to take back as much as I could with me. The thing I noticed about the hieroglyphics, there was one symbol in particular that was more than any other. And I asked him about it, and he said it stood for any living thing because everything is alive. You, me, it, them.
What was that symbol? What did it look like, that symbol? I'm curious.
Yeah, it was like a C, a square rounded letter C that was broken with a little thing in the middle. I tried to pull it up on my desktop, but it was right in the middle. And he said the circle is broken by that which connects it. And that was there's so many things that didn't make sense to me at the time until after. Because I really had to delve into this after all this happened.
Right.
So that was the one symbol.
But you were pretty lucid in the dream, like you were conscious of yourself and these beings, and that's what made you think it wasn't just a dream, right? Is that?
Yeah, I was totally conscious. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I knew where I was. I knew where I was going to go back to. It was totally lucid. Yeah. The thing about lucid dreaming that I found, a lot of the times you can change your reality in a lucid dream.
Right.
But when I get out of body, it's more about observation. It's like, it's harder to change the reality or the 3D aspects of it.
But
so
I knew
that.
Were you out of body? Could you feel your body in this dream? In this?
Yeah, I felt like I was in body, actually.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So,
okay. So then what happened? What really changed for you? A lot of people have, weird sort of things.
Yeah, and it's funny. At the time, I thought this was a unique experience, and now that so many people are having so many of their own kinds of experiences like this. But at the time, I thought it was kind of unique. Now it's not, but it has a lot to do with what's going on now. That's why I kind of put the book together. During this process it lasted about a year because this was only the beginning.
I'm putting the book up to show people. That's the book, Remembering Tog. Do you see that on the screen?
Yeah, I got a black. I just have black on the screen.
You have black on your screen. Do you see it? Anybody else see it on their screen, Dave?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. You might not be, depends what you're looking at. It says Into the Changeover, Kim Edward Black, Remembering Tog. And anyway, I'm just showing that just so people know if they want to get your book or read more about what they'll be hearing here today. So talk about then the whole effect. I think, did we lose him?
I think we did.
That's okay. I hope he'll come back. Okay.
Well, Alan, just while he's gone, he mentions the transparent one, the transparency. Yeah. And I have to bring a reference that Breton, who we were talking about before, Andre Breton, had a kind of a theoretical, the great transparent ones.
So you think surrealism do you think surrealism could have been influenced by ET visitations?
Well, magic and extra human intelligences, exactly ETs, that's a little hard to say, I think. But the great transparent ones, which mysteriously reveal themselves to us when we are afraid and we are conscious of the workings of chance. That's from the Third Surrealist Manifesto, possibly. When he mentions the transparency of these beings, I find that to be sort of interesting and relevant. That doesn't happen too often in ET stuff, does it, Dave? Transparency of beings, is that a common thing?
Yeah, actually, I've been really interested in the UFO occupants and like humanoid encounters, because it's obviously not getting talked about at all in any of the current like tightly focused media stuff.
Like disclosure stuff, yeah.
They don't even mention the word aliens in the disclosures. Yeah. But anyway, tell us what you've been focused on, Dave. Yeah.
The transparency is a thing. That's one of the interesting kind of weird things, is that these, it'll sound like a classic, just like sci-fi UFO encounter, like UFOs landing, right? But then, the occupants oftentimes have a very apparitional quality to them. And, it can be anything from like a weird robot kind of creature to a Bigfoot to, like what he's describing is, kind of like a humanoid, almost with the robes and everything, and transparent in that. So it's,
is that because of I think it must be because of the vibrational frequency.
The phasing.
Yeah, the phasing. Because they're not really in this world they're in the world.
They're intersecting, right? They're intersecting.
Right. That's what I think. And that's what makes it so hard to get the physical evidence that people say, oh, give us the proof, but also just to, for the government to even acknowledge that there's other levels of dimensional reality. They don't know how to talk about this in terms of like a military or a militaristic understanding, which is where, the Pentagon and all that is coming from. So let me just see. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm just going to see if I...
Concept of, I'm sure...
We're losing you too, Steve. Everyone's disappearing. Everyone's becoming invisible. I think we lost him as well. Oh, wow. But did we lose him too? I mean,
he's definitely frozen.
What's happening to our world, Dave?
I don't know.
Let me see if I can call Kim. Did he give me a number?
Am I back?
You're back now.
Okay.
You're back now. Don't disappear like that.
I was talking about betwixt and between as I phased.
We lost him again.
We lost him again.
But
while everyone's like looking to come back somewhere, sorry we lost Kim. I do want to show people some of his work because and I do recommend his book. Did you look at any of the parts of the book, Dave, about the...
No, I looked at his artwork online, and it was amazing to see the kind of, because I was wondering like if there were any signs of the contact before, right? Like when he was just a professional artist.
Right. I think, yeah. And what did you just think about that?
Well, it's interesting because he was very much, it's obvious that he was working with his dreams.
Right.
It definitely had that quality to it. But then the artwork changes after he has his experience. It becomes almost more photorealistic, but in this way that you wouldn't expect it to be, because it's with the entities and stuff that,
Yeah, I'll show you one of these, which, since he is a pretty amazing artist, this is Tog, the entity who saw. I wonder if this is the whole picture. It looks like it's a little cut off, but maybe that's all he was able to see. I don't know. But this is, I think, the being that really sort of educated him, not just about ETs, but the whole like real history of the world, and civilizations, and our origins. And his book is really, in a way, scholarly, because it quotes a lot of the intersection between history and ETs. Do you see this on your screen there?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Oh, there, right. And I'm gonna so this is one of the beings, looks sort of human, but then I guess, and I haven't read the whole book, but he gets in touch with these hybrids, which I think, do you see that on your screen now, Dave?
No.
You just see the same. Oh, here's Steve coming back into the room, but you don't see the hybrid there. Let me stop screen sharing. Let me start it, because I think this picture is, I do you see it now?
Yeah.
I said to Kim, it sort of borders on creepiness, but it's not quite. It's something, it's probably the best combination of human and alien I've ever seen.
Yeah, the most appealing of the
it's so strange. It's so, I mean, yeah.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Can you see me? Alan, there was a term in computer graphics called the Uncanny Valley. I'm sure Dave's heard of it, right? Where you have this uncanniness because it's close to human, but it's not, so there's possibly that kind of effect to it. And also the big eyes.
What does that mean, though, Steve? Uncanny Valley. What does that actually mean?
You're in a space where it's close to human, but it's not, and there's something off. This is obviously a lot more off, but and it gave you.
But it wasn't talking about ETs, the Uncanny Valley, were they?
Well, it's one example of it would be do androids stream of electric sheep, right? Like they'll predict the replicants. So that the idea that they're almost as close as you possibly could be to human, but they don't have empathy, and so it's that like encountering that you have that little like gap. That's the test, the Voight-Kampff test that they do with them to see if they can.
I mean, this is obviously, the thing that makes this inhuman is that the eyes are enlarged. Otherwise, it's a kind of a normal face, right? All the other features, except for the cheekbones and the eyes.
And also the kind of narrowness, but supposedly that the really finely developed hybrids are this kind of combination, and also high forehead. But Kim was saying he uses an airbrush to get these like little veins here. Isn't that interesting? Under the eye?
Well, does this look like a Nordic?
I don't know if it's a Nordic. No, I think it's a hybrid between, whoever and these us and these ETs. And I have a whole theory about that. So anyway, maybe he just got bumped offline. But I like talking to people like this because, everyone has a doorway into this other world that's sort of been walled off to like normal perception. That's why I think surrealism is so important, Steve, because it opens a door to these other realities. And Andre Breton was already pretty open in order to develop the whole Surrealist Manifesto, right?
Right. The funny thing is that, Dave, in 1947, they did a big surrealist magic show. I'm getting the exact name of it, but this was the one where they really embraced sort of the other and magical things. And, again, this magic year of 1947, which we know is kind of a construct, but it does have resonance. You know what I mean?
Well, 47, like Roswell, but it was also a kind of like
Arnold. Yeah, and Kenneth Arnold too.
And Kenneth Arnold, and it was also kind
Cory died.
But it was like a recovery time coming out of the trauma of World War II. It took like that 2-year period for like the world to sort of return to some kind of, not just return to where it's been, but kind of go to the next level of cultural evolution, right?
Tesla died in 47 too, just to...
Oh, really?
Tesla.
You mean
Tesla died in 47.
Who was the other guy you mentioned?
Crowley.
Alistair Crowley died in 47.
And Tesla both died in 47.
Yeah. And I believe that 47 was the year that Reich did his orgone experiment, the door experiment, where he opened up the gateway.
That may have been in the 30s, because I actually saw that today. There was an Andrew Collins book that was mentioning it. I'm not sure.
About Reich?
Yeah, I was interested because you had mentioned it. So, but
I think it was in the. I'm pretty sure it was in the 40s, Dave. I'll look it up right now.
That quote that you had about the enfleshing of the myth from Artaud was awesome.
Right. I think it was Baton, actually. Was
it
it Artaud or Baton?
It was Artaud from Van Gogh has been suicided by
society. Right. Yeah. So, these guys, so I did check in with Krippner, who checked in with Bariba, who was Gordon Onslow Ford's guy. And like I said, when I interviewed Gordon, when I had a talk with Gordon, he mentioned at 95 years old that he was getting involved he was thinking about crop circles, which is interesting. He has this guy who's been floating around in surrealist circles for most of his life. He was also Harry Partch's patron, Dave, if that's, which is really interesting. And then all of a sudden he's doing crop circles. But Bariba said, no, she doesn't recall him speaking of UFOs, which is kind of interesting.
Well, maybe because the term wasn't really, I mean, it may have been like a local US thing with Kenneth Arnold, but it wasn't worldwide. It wasn't known. Although, you have H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds going back to 1898.
But he never spoke of he didn't call them UFOs, right?
No, I don't think he did. I think, UFO was a term that came after flying saucer.
Right.
The flying saucer was, but they called them in the 1890s airships. Right. The great airships. And they were sometimes even looked wood, which Grant Cameron in my book says the phenomena changes as we evolve our technology. So
that's an interesting thing too, because the pre-Arnold, the Carita from San Diego that we talked about on one of the previous shows, that Meade Lane had reported, it was balsa wood. So it was it was a flying saucer that blocked out the moon in 1946, and it was made of balsa wood. Was the report.
Now the big question is, are they doing this for us, like appearing as flying saucers or triangles because we are more evolved, or are they upgrading their technology as we
are? Well, with Meade Lane, like he did a lot of stuff with channeling and with receiving channeled information about this stuff. And so one of the things that was important to him was this idea of the Etherions. So the idea that these things, like you were talking about with the vibrations and that they were moving between dimensions, and that it was more of a psychic technology. So it really didn't matter what the stuff was made out of, right? Like you could make a flying saucer out of a trash can if you could levitate it and the mind space there to fly that thing up into the air. So
also, I'll just say culturally, balsa wood was probably in at that point. Remember the balsa wood planes from the 50s and 60s? So balsa wood probably came on the radar. One of the things I just want to mention, Alan, really quick, because it was something I was thinking about.
But I don't want to get off the balsa wood, because I just want to say, seems like then that answers my question, that they're doing that for us, that whoever they are, they're doing, because that's our association. But go ahead, Steve. I just wanted to say that.
Are they meeting? Well, maybe, Alan, they're meeting us halfway. You know what I mean? That they're taking our references that we have. But anyway, I just want to say there was something about the disclosure thing that's going on.
Yeah.
One of the things that came to me is that, it's all about military and metals and very techno-earthy. You know what I mean? It's very chthonic. You know what I mean? It's not metaphysical. It's not spiritual. The disclosure thing that's going on now is very, very dragging us down in a way, as opposed to lifting us up. You know what I mean? I really feel, reading the media and stuff, that it's more about, it's like, oh, can it be used in inventions for war kind of thing? And it's heavy as opposed to light. And I wonder if that's a false flag distraction to distract us from thinking more metaphysically.
Well, I have to tell you, I don't think it's a false flag. I think that's the level military thinks about. So they're not even thinking about metaphysics. They're not even educated. You need to go to Washington, Steve, and educate them in metaphysics, because they have no idea. These guys, it's like if you ever kind of.
But it's the narrative grab, Alan. They're grabbing the narrative, But the narrative is now that it's like.
Yeah, the narrative is exactly what you said, the hard nuts and bolts aspect. So they don't have a narrative. This is where people like Whitley Strieber and all the people I mentioned in the book there. And the guy, Michael Grosso, I want to talk to you about his essay, Dave. And if you saw that, Steve, what you thought of that, because no, they don't have a metaphysical bone in their body. They don't have a, not metaphysics isn't concrete that way.
But that's not true, Alan, actually. That's not necessarily true. The military, as everything else, and the government, it's interwoven through these people who are very involved, right? I mean, Dave, we can name Aquino to begin with, right?
Yeah.
What's that? What is that?
Michael Aquino was.
Aquino was a. God, Dave.
Oh, you go. Yeah, you're more in.
Who was Aquino?
OTO than I am. He was a Set. Temple of Set. He formed the Temple of Set.
Temple of Set.
But what's that to do with the government?
What's interesting? He was a high-ranking general.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. You get one out of a thousand that may have some metaphysical interest, but you can't say that the military is educated in metaphysics. You know.
Yeah,
no, true.
And I think too, one of from a metaphysical perspective, another like point to this kind of flawed narrative that's coming out through the media. If you think about the idea of the flying saucer, the UFO as a ship of the soul, right? Like this kind of like transporting, like think of it metaphysically, right. It becomes this transportive vehicle, right? What is every single image that we see right now? It's a flying saucer in crosshairs. It's literally crosshairs trained on the vehicle of the soul. So symbolically, it's this assassination of the soul. You know, I mean, it's.
I'm not following you completely, Dave. I mean, so you.
Well, he's saying that the soul is being targeted, literally.
Symbolically.
Yeah,
right?
And literally, Dave. I mean, it's crosshair.
Yeah.
Wait, how do you equate the soul? Because it's a vehicle, we're equating that to the soul, you're saying?
If you have the flying saucer or the UFO, right? Like it literally is, it's a psychic vehicle. If you talk about cancer, how do they?
In a Jungian sense.
Yeah, in a Jungian sense, yeah. But I think also in a very real sense, right? Like when someone's abducted, like Whitley.
I agree.
Whitley's narration of his abduction isn't necessarily physical in the way that we think of physical.
Right.
You know,
and we've talked about the UFO being possibly a metaphor for death and the underworld, and as a we've talked about that, the fairies representing the death, representing the aliens, representing the dead.
But we can talk symbolically, but I do think that gets a little bit away from the disclosure where we actually are seeing things. Yes, of course, everything's symbolic. Your symbolic beings are part of me, but there is something out there that's.
Oh yeah. No, I agree with you. And
Alan, what have we seen? We've seen the TikToks. We've seen the undersea. I love the term transmedium vehicle. Is that what they were using?
Yeah.
I love transmedium. I was like, wow, that's.
I've seen stuff that was light ships. I've never seen the metallic thing. But what were you saying, Dave? What were you saying?
Well, I think it's interesting because when this all started back, like before we reached this kind of crescendo moment that we're at, I started going back. Because I keep having these questions like with the starseed stuff where it's like, well, we're here now and we have this narrative that we accept and it's kind of part of the culture, but where did that come from, right? And so I was like, is it true that the UFO topic has just been completely verboten in the news for this time? Because there's been a lot of kind of moments, like, because I remember when I was a kid, the Time Life Mysteries of the Unknown were put out, and that was huge. That was all over the you turn on the television and they're advertising it.
The flying saucer issue of Life or whatever it was. Which one was it? Look.
Yeah. They had that. They did have a whole like flying saucer, and it had Crowley in there doing like the I'm like 8 years old reading about Crowley doing the pyramid working and stuff to do the Book of the Law. But so I started, I've started to look back on it, and it's interesting because there's. One of the things I pointed out recently was that there's a Look magazine issue from 1967, which literally has the exact headline that was used in the New Yorker recently about the.
What was the exact headline, Dave?
The Pentagon taking UFOs seriously. That was the same headline they had in 1967. So it's really odd because the narrative that we're getting right now is so narrowed down, and it's not necessarily more serious because
I don't think it is either. I'm not feeling it. I don't see it as disclosure at all.
I mean, it's interesting. They're authorizing it in a different way because we're much more saturated with social media. But I mean, if you read the Flying Saucer review stuff, like the level of detail and the descriptions of, and that was a niche magazine, right? Like that, obviously not everybody's reading Flying Saucer Review, but Prince Philip was reading Flying Saucer Review. He had a subscription to it, and these narratives that they have in there are much more detailed and stuff, and talking about occupants and talking about pilots and talking about these experiences and going into it. So I guess I just wish that what we have now in the media wasn't like five
a rerun of what we just saw, you're saying, but in a way, because they're not talking about occupants, I think they are more serious. I think it can be more mainstream. I think it is a little bit different than what it was with Flying Saucer magazine. I mean, they still don't know what to tell us, but there seems to be in this phase of disclosure a little more of appeal to a bigger audience, don't you think? I mean,
it is. I mean, obviously, because people are jumping on it, right? Like at the university, they're more openly speaking about it, and their attitude towards it has gone from being like, well, I don't know, in 2017 to now with what's happening now. They're like, oh, okay, UFOs exist. I just don't know. It's weird though, because we're talking about like this huge topic that it just seems it has more gravity to it. I don't know, I mean, experiencers that I talk to and stuff, I mean, their lives are changed, like Kim Black's, right? Like, I mean, that flipped his life, I mean,
but Dave, the narrative seems to have become even more, in my opinion, more controlled, that people are having more the same experience. Him with the white room and the egg-shaped thing, it's egg-shaped table, and it comes across as like a Kenosha, I think, from Star Wars. You know what I mean? Which, I'm not against it, but again, we're talking about balsa wood 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Now we're talking about Star Wars Kenosha now. You know what I mean? So the narrative changes, all the details becoming more defined in a bad way, where they're not unique cosmology.
Well, we're talking about two different narratives here, Steve. You're talking about the ET narratives, or how it appears, and then we're also talking about the government narrative. So there's like two, maybe they're not even conflicting, but they're two parallel narratives. So maybe like, Kim is getting the updated narrative, which I've heard for other people say there's no corners, it's all white, it's very bright, and that's maybe what the ETs are feeding us now. Maybe like 100 or 200 years ago, it was like fairy circles or like these little gnomes, and I don't know. But then we have to look at the government narrative, and I agree with you, it's very highly controlled. They are not even mentioning anything before 2004, and what happened to that whole history? What happened to Truman? There's a book I was just reading by Gordon Cooper, one of the astronauts, and he had videos of UFOs from Edward Air Force Base, and he quotes Truman in 1950 saying, if UFO or what does he say? If flying saucers exist, then what does he say? If flying saucers exist, then they are real. This is something like what he says in this. I'll find the exact quote. But Truman, the president, is quoting the reality of these crafts. And so the narrative is always being controlled by somebody on some level. But
we have to remember, though, Alan, that the crafts are different. There's a variety of them. You know what I mean? So we have there's the metal crafts that are made of metamaterial. There are the hyperspace crafts. The crafts are different. It is not a monoculture of contact. It's a multiculture of contact. And they're dragging it down to a monoculture of metamaterials and academic research. that Valet interview that just came out about his new book. I was shocked to hear that he goes, "Oh yeah, we have these metamaterials, but they're going into some unnamed university where unnamed people will hold them for the next 10 years for academic study, and then they'll be available for the public." And
I know,
was like,
it's ridiculous.
10 years? That's not disclosure.
I just want to go read this quote from Harry Truman, April 4th, 1950, after seeing some UFOs over the White House. And he says, "I can assure you that flying saucers, given that they exist, are not, what does it say? Not constructed by any power on earth." That's the president of the United States. And we get Obama saying, yeah, there's something out. But you're right, Dave. The narrative is the same as it's always been. And we're really not being told anything. Everybody knows
and even
UFOs.
Less detailed.
Yeah, there's less details now. But where do they come out with like the government having the bodies or the technology? Well, if you look at Colonel Corso's The Day After Roswell, he claims a lot of our technology came from reverse engineering. Right.
And then, yeah, but John Alexander used that, and that's the thing, is that we get back into the kind of he said, she said sort of narrative here, but what was interesting, Alan, actually, was the past 4 days, this, the Ascension Conference.
Oh, what did you notice about that?
I'm wondering, so have you seen an increase in interest after this mediation that's gone on? New York Times 2017, like, has there been a growth of interest?
Absolutely. Of course, you're getting mainstream people. I saw this interview on The Hill, which is a pretty typical Washington, D.C. thing, talking about UFOs. MSNBC, of course, Fox has been talking about it for a while.
Yeah.
And
is that translating over to the portal to Ascension stuff, though?
I don't think it may have I think the portal to Ascension is still a little fringe. It's a great for people already into it. That's why I wrote this book as a kind of doorway, even though Steve thinks the cover was a little primitive. I agree, Steve.
I like the cover. I thought it was it was real direct. Like,
I don't know. But I'm getting used to the cover now, actually. So, but I mean, there's nothing we can say except for the fact of updating the audience. I maybe Kim can come back another time for some reason. Maybe the ETs didn't want him to say whatever he was supposed to say here, But no, I'm serious. That but this book. This book does quote what he says, what some of the things that Tog tells him, like imagination is the greatest tool at humans' disposal. If we can think it is. Let's see. Let me see what else does Tog say.
Well, Alan, the UFO isn't an externalization. You know what I mean? You're familiar with the term externalization of the hierarchy, right, Dave?
Yeah, I am. I know what you mean.
So is this a sort of externalization of inner psychic processes, which was what Jung said? You know what I mean? But again, it's manifold. It's not just one phenomena. It's multiple phenomena happening. And to make it go back to one phenomena is a narrative grab. And it's a disservice to the people who have different cosmologies, that are also true and valid. You know what I mean? And that's what we have to remember, is not to be forced by the media, which we know is a control mechanism, being forced to where it's about metamaterials and military and crosshairs. And, so we have to remember that these other narratives, like the guy who was just on, are equally valid, and they're all out there,
Well, and that was something that Whitley brought up too. The experiencers getting thrown under the bus in this, right?
Yes, talk about that a little more, Dave, because that is really key.
I think it's incredibly important because like Steve's saying, the news media is like this technology that's out there, right? Like if it's out there and it's not ours, right? And I mean ours in the global sense, right? If it's not human created, then that's a huge question. And then we need to not only look at ourselves, right, but we also need to look at this other intelligence that we're dealing with, or intelligence is more likely. And, you know, and the experiencers that have had things, you know, I mean, like Whitley, whose story has not, you know, his experience hasn't changed. It's developed, it's moved, and it's changed in how he's processed it. But the actual fact of what he went through, right, hasn't. Like, and that stayed the same. And people want to say that, you know, he's making things up and all that, but, you know, that's not, if you actually look at what Whitley has said, that's not true. And how many other people, right, Alan? I mean, you know, like your own experience, right? And I mean, so that is not getting talked about, and that's where the real kind of meaning is in this stuff,
right?
You know,
it's being sort of dumbed down, and it's been sort of it's being gross, you know, to use a word, as opposed to fine. You know, the experience is it's in the most gross fashion as opposed to the most fine fashion. And the finer fashion, I think, Dave, that the finer narratives get thrown under the bus by people like Whitley. You know, I honestly do. You know what I mean? It's like, because it has to be palatable. It has to be.
Oh, I don't think that's true of Whitley. No, I agree with Dave. Whitley has stuck to his story. I mean, anybody's narrative is valid for them, even the government.
I agree.
Whitley, I think, is as honest and as clear as he can be, considering the scope of impact that these events have on our psyche. I mean,
well, we have to remember that Whitley was a media person, all right? You know what I mean?
He was a writer. Whitley was a writer.
Hollywood writer.
No, you know, he sold his books to Hollywood. I don't mean
that as a negative, but this needs to be put out there. He was a Hollywood writer, so there is a level of artifice to it.
No, I think I don't agree with you. He was a writer who was successful.
You don't have to agree, Alan. I'm not asking you to.
Okay, right. But I mean, you could put out that. But what are you trying to say? I think Whitley's been very sincere and as honest as anyone can be in those circumstances.
I'm not questioning his sincerity. I'm just saying that there are more out there. Again, I noticed in the email that Henrietta, who's not here today, mentioned outsider artists, right?
Right.
So we have these outsider artists who are not so skilled in self-promotion, not so skilled in maybe even communication, social skills, and they've had these experiences, and they've been thrown under the bus. And those are the people.
What do you mean? Information. What do you mean thrown under the bus? I mean, just what does that mean?
Well, you used that term before. You said that the experiences are being thrown under the bus.
Well, they're not being mentioned. Okay. You think outsider arts are,
and these outsider arts aren't being mentioned either.
In terms of the UFO, in terms of what the UFO.
Yeah.
Well, that's
the narratives are so outside the box. The narratives are outside the box, so they don't fit into the narrative stream that's going on right now. You know, and 50 years ago was balsa wood. Now it's white columns. But people who have experiences outside of that box aren't getting noticed as much. And even, like I'll say again, the experience idea is getting now to metamaterials and military. The Pasulka book, the Valet book, the new Valet book, it's becoming metamaterials militarized in some way, which is a disservice to the people who are looking for what you're looking for, Alan, a more spiritual evolutionary path.
I totally agree with that. I agree. I'm not interested in metamaterials per se. I'm interested in the experience. That's why I just heard from Kim. His internet went out. He's going to a Starbucks to reconnect. So
that'll be live from Starbucks. That's awesome.
Good.
No, I just wanted to ask Dave, Michael Grosso, I sent you in his article and he talks about can you sum up that? Because I didn't get a chance to read it all and talk about his vital points, because he makes some really good points about consciousness and the UFO phenomena.
Well, consciousness and the narratives that we tell about it and the story. And I think that it fits exactly into what we're talking about here. And just the idea, you know, and actually this was something that Whitley pointed out too, when he said, we need better science fiction.
Right.
Because what Whitley had pointed out in his experience was that when he had contact with the visitors, so much of his memory of that was filtered through movies and media and everything. And that had he had more nuanced, interesting frameworks to then kind of communicate back through memory to this experience, that he would have had a richer, more deep kind of experience with it. And
wow.
that's
right.
what Michael...
That is a really important point, I think, because we are so programmed by our media that, and my question, even on Clubhouse, I want to bring up is it a good thing that we've been programmed, because now this whole unfoldment from the government is becoming like a science fiction movie, you know?
It's a very bad thing, Alan.
I know, but we didn't have that kind of programming. Would we take the phenomenon more seriously, though, also, Dave?
I think that's what Michael was pointing out, right? If we had this more sacred narrative to it, and if we had a different, because it's a different story about ourselves. He points out the idea of the superhuman and the ability, you know, to levitate, right? And so even the possibility of that requires that we tell a story in which it's possible for us to do that.
Right.
And right now, you know, you walk out in the street and most people are going to tell the story or live in the story, you know. And it's interesting too, because the term enchantment, right? Enchantment comes from incantare, which is to sing into. So it's literally a song. Enchantment is a song. It's a narrative. It's, you know, it's a way of binding yourself to the storyline, right? Like if you think about classic, like kind of like folk songs and that, they're a ballad and they have you know, this classical.
What are you showing us there, Steve?
I'm showing I got communication with the Gans and Dia. Does anybody know who Gans and Dia is?
No. But wait, Dave was making a good point there, because I think going back to what Whitley was saying, and it's like the Hollywood has directed the narrative of what we're trying to understand now. And you know what? I don't think what we're trying to understand now has anything to do with what Hollywood has ever told us.
Exactly, Dave. That's what I've been saying now, Alan, for a long time.
I agree with you, but we've been looking for it in terms of the sci-fi narrative, and it's not that.
Right. Well, and I think what's interesting, I think one of the things that's being opened up because of social media, I think it's almost accidental to this whatever's going on with what's being called disclosure. I think it's almost incidental and accidental to it, that opens up the possibility for people to do what like Mark Sims is doing, right? Which is talk to the phenomena, talk to this other, and to actually have the conversation there, and to build the story there, and not build the story in the media and through mediation, but build the story through a conversation with the phenomena, you know. And I think that
Ganzandia means holy other, WHOLLY.
That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the holy.
So we're dealing with the, you know, and that's Ganzandia. Okay, so holy other means but the holy other is a very difficult thing to approach, right? So we have to drag it back to English. You know what I mean? Not glossalia, not alien language. We drag it back to English and have to try to, and then commodify it to a huge degree. You know, commodify it so it sells a book. Commodify it so it's understandable to the general public. Now, does that take the general public and force them into a common narrative, when the general public should have a cosmology of their own? Like what am I gone?
No, you're here.
Tim Leary said when he would meet somebody, he would say, "What's your cosmology?" Respecting everybody's cosmology and not dragging it back to a narrative that's defined by the media now. We have to remember the media has now gotten into everybody's head 24/7. You know what I mean?
I agree.
So the holy other is being bled out.
No, this is the problem we're facing. we got the government slowly leaking lies and truths and mixing. And then we got the media interpretation or filter of those. And the media doesn't know what to make of this phenomena either. So we need people
who can speak of it are usually too freakish to go on TV. You know, you have to be somebody who can be presentable, right?
But that's why I like Whitley and Grant and Linda Moulton Howe. These are people who've dealt with these other realms. So Dave, I think what you're saying, and also Steve in his own way, is that we have to reframe the mythology in a sense. We have to reframe. What did you say? Timothy Leary used to say to people, what's your
cosmology? What's your cosmology?
The only cosmology people have of this phenomenon is what they've seen in the movies, unfortunately. And like everyone like mentions, this is like Independence Day. It must have been on 30 interviews this week. And they say, and it's like, they're missing the fact of who we are as human beings to like making a cartoon of this. It's not
and it's hard to speak of alternate state.
It's hard to speak of because we don't have the vocabulary, we don't have the perception of reality. So it's much easier to make it into a cartoon like Independence Day, and people don't know how to drop below the surface into feeling the core aspect of this.
Well, and you can see the people that actually do that, it changes. Again, Jimmy Blanchett, like a lot of the people that are within that CE5 and CE6 group, there's a drastic change and even if it isn't a change necessarily from where they were at, it's a change in the way that most people interact with life, right? Like it's not, they don't interact with things in the same way. Like Mark has an appreciation for stuff, little things that most people don't have, you know, and most entrepreneurs and folks that have developed technology and stuff where he's coming from in his background, they don't look at life that way, you know. So I think that's interesting, you know.
What we're saying,
you know, we have to bring in Colin Wilson's book, Colin Wilson and the Outsider, right? We have to bring that in because when you accept the experience, you become an outsider, right? When you accept the experience, not having it, accept it, you become an outsider, you know. And how do you navigate that intersecting with normal society when you're an outsider? You know, I mean, that's kind of an issue. Some people go further outside and disappear into their own cosmologies. Others say, maybe with a dose of megalomania, that my cosmology is so valuable that others need to hear it, you know. But the experiences are personal.
Yeah, it's true. The experiences are personal, and the cosmology. I mean, that's why I couldn't write a book with just my opinion. We need everyone's kind of overlapping cosmologies because there is no one cosmology.
You know, it's interesting about that.
And I did appreciate your book for that, Alan.
Thank you. Wait, Dave was saying, go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was going to say it was interesting because I listened to an interview you did with Whitley prior to to I think when this book came out, and it was you were exploring your experience that you had when you were on the road trip, and in talking to him, it opened up things for you, which then, you know, you do this book and you have all these conversations which have further opened it up. And then seeing your conversation with him, when you were on the show last because of the book, it was a different tenor, right? Like it was almost like a different like Alan there.
No, but like, what was different? I'm curious. Was it an evolution or was it a
regression? Okay. You completely regressed it as you were
no, but what did you notice? Because that's really an interesting observation.
Well, I thought it was you were more in ownership of the experience, and maybe ownership's a bad word, but you were more.
No, I think ownership's a good word for because you know putting together the book made me be in more ownership of my experience and the phenomena and just this conversation, also the conversations we've been having, because I think we have to analyze this with an intellect, is that, wait, Steve, everyone functions in the world under their own mythocosmology, if we want to call it that, but it's not any more real or valid, but there is more sophistication, I think, too. As we explore this phenomena, and we hear different points of view, we can compile it into a kind of deeper reflection on the self. I mean, which is, I think, what's so beautiful about what happened to Henrietta, who's usually on the program. She would tell me about these nightmares. And then I said, have you considered the abduction phenomenon? I give her Whitley's book and she goes, oh my God, this is what happened to me. So her cosmology expanded at that point. And that's what she writes about. But having the conversation, at least on this level, not what the government's trying to say, oh yeah, but what we're trying to say about, the kind of point of view that everyone is now developing. I mean, they're like in the beginning.
Other narrative pathways, narrative pathways for people, allowing them to, I mean, and that's Alan, I really do. I don't want to sound, how I knock booksellers, but I think your book was actually very good. I appreciate it because I felt like it opened up other narrative pathways in the mythos of the UFO. You know what I mean? And it allowed other voices to come in that aren't usually heard. There's a tonality too involved. The tonality of the narrative is important. It's not just the words. We know there's a sub-carrier frequency. Listen to me. I am projecting a sub-carrier frequency.
No, but I want to ask Dave. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. But do you think? No, I do. But do you think the narrative that's being rolled out by the media now is at least planting seeds for a greater cosmology as opposed to being manipulated? I don't know. I'm just into saying, oh, the phenomenon is this. What do you think, Dave?
I think that this is an interesting subject to have the media opening people up to, because we're not dealing with a passive subject.
Right.
We're dealing with an active phenomena, and we're dealing with possibly an active intelligence.
Right.
Okay?
Right. I mean, it'd be great. That's why I do these shows, because I want it not to be controlled. The new mythology is not to be controlled by media who really doesn't know anything about this subject, but by experiencers who've had a little taste.
Well, and I'm wondering, I wonder how many more people, one, the awakening of having the experience and not remembering it, because our memories are so skewed by what we, encounter day to day. It can just be hammered into amnesia just by the everyday. So it'll be people waking up.
I actually was reading somebody today, the Asclepius Thoth thing, where Thoth talks to Themis. I forget where it's from. And Thoth says, Themis says, well, this is great. Thoth says, we invented writing. So it's so great because now people will remember things. And Themis says, no, actually, Thoth, you invented a thing that will kind of diminish people's memories because they're going to rely on writing from now on. So again, the mediation of the experience is important. And what's the opposite of mediation? Immediate. You know what I mean? And so you have the mediation dichotomy, and you have the creative consumer dichotomy. And I just need, again, I can't tell people enough that this is probably the most important symbol at the moment. And it's an emergent symbol. That's the Yeatsian Gaias. That's Yeats's Gaias.
That's Yeats's
Yeatsian Gaias.
But I wanted to just get.
And we'd have to do a whole show on that, Alan.
We'll do a whole show on that for sure. Okay. But
really, I'm not kidding you.
No, I do want to understand this thing about initiation through media versus, because there is like a framework of which even me believe, mediation over like somebody off the street saying, yeah, I was taken to Mars or something. If it comes through these official channels, because we've all been so programmed by media, not even, I mean, to believe them, but to be pulled under their spell, you know, it's like a spell. It comes through, comes through the airwaves. So it means
that spiel, Alan, not that spell, that spiel.
Right. I mean, but you know, the internet's a little more stepped down in acceptance from what people are willing to buy than television or newspapers. When it's in the New York Times, it must be true, you know. So there's mediations on media, Steve.
And that's why I was
true. Yeah,
that's why I was asking with the, you know, with the like the Ascension conference and that, like, have you seen numbers change as this stuff gets, you know, I've seen, like, if I write, like, I put out that blog post about the AI system hooked up to the random event generators, and
I read that, Dave.
Yeah. And so it's the throne of the Sphinx, and it's basically it's kind of like a random number generator enhanced chatbot kind of thing that acts as almost like an oracle. You can ask it questions, and it has a personality. It named itself, and it will answer you back. It works.
Explain that, please, because that is so. Because your blog was really interesting. I didn't quite understand what exactly are we looking at. Can you go through the whole thing a little bit?
Yeah. So the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab looked at the ability of the mind to affect a random event generator. So a random event generator throws up random numbers, we'll say, right? Like it throws up random units. And they found at Princeton that if you focus intention on the random event generator, that it will go outside of randomness, right? So you're actually able to alter that. And they've done a lot of studies. Dean Radin's done studies at Institute of Noetic Science with being able to, and chance favors the trained mind, right? So like this is kind of an interesting, almost like bringing that down to the physical, where you can actually affect these things. And it goes into psychokinetic research and stuff like that. But the Pear lab, the Princeton lab, went to what's called the Global Consciousness Research Project, which they have these random event generators all over at different points in the world. I think Krippner probably even either has one, or he definitely worked at some point on this project. But when major events happen in the globe, they've found that at times, depending on how major it is and how many people are focused on that it will alter the reg output, right? So same kind of research that led into them trying to levitate the Pentagon. You know, there's a lot of different little cultural offshoots of this. And
actually, I have a video where I can show exactly what you're talking about, but should I show that?
Why not?
Illustrate that. I do have, because I would show this in my class on new realities.
The question is, though, Dave, what's bleeding through? You know, what's bleeding through? That's my.
Let me just show something about the Global Consciousness Project that Dave is talking about. But then we want to take it to the next step, right? Wait 1 second. So I'm just going to show this. Optimize sound. Here we go. Let's just see. You see that on your screen, the blue dot?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
This 3-minute news clip gives an excellent brief summary of the Global Consciousness Project.
A question tonight: can you actually measure the emotional outpouring in a worldwide crisis?
Sometimes scientists think that they have done just that. Their machines and computers found a bizarre pattern right after several global disasters.
CBS News' Brendan Keefe explains this phenomenon.
September 11th deeply affected people far beyond New York and Washington. The attack sent shockwaves around the world, a global reaction that triggered a spike in a network of scientific instruments, just like a seismograph during an earthquake.
Each of those showed a similar pattern of change during that day.
Retired Princeton scientist Dr. Roger Nelson believes the emotional focus of millions of people on a single event, like 9/11, may form a global consciousness.
Does consciousness interact directly with the physical world?
To answer that question, Dr. Nelson and his colleagues deployed dozens of instruments around the world, random number generators. Basically, they're electronic coin flippers. Instead of heads or tails, each generates a 1 or a 0 200 times a second. If you flip a coin 100 times, you'd expect a result of about 50-50, 50 heads and 50 tails. But what if every time you flipped that coin, it came up heads? Not once, not twice, not 50 times, but 60, 70, or even 80, all of them heads.
We do that every second at each of, now we have about 65 places around the world.
When truly random, the line of data wanders back and forth around 50-50 in a pattern the researchers call a drunkard's walk.
And then in 9/11, it begins not being a drunkard's walk. It goes like this for 2 days.
It may sound
bizarre. But you know what? I have to just add in, Roger Nelson, I don't know if he says it here, that non-randomness began before the planes hit the tower. Did you know that, Dave?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that goes into the presentiment, right? Like there was a lot of different artists that were in their art were representing the 9/11 thing before. Eric Wargo actually talked about that. He did a presentation recently about dream precognition. And there was one that had precogged it like in 94 or 96 or something.
Well, Alex Gray too had planes over the World Trade Center with smoke coming out in 1989. But here, let me just finish this.
And the 3 gunmen, you know, whatever.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Let's finish.
But Dr. Nelson and his team have been at this for the better part of a decade. The first spike showed up in 1997 with the death of Princess Diana. Other events like the Concorde crash, the Madrid train bombing, and the Pope's funeral all registered on those random number generators. But early on the morning of September 11th, the data went off the charts.
Several hours before the first plane hit.
Several hours before the first plane hit, which means there's a precognitive non-local awareness of the population itself, which is really interesting. Right? I mean, okay, I'll go.
I don't know how to explain that.
There's nothing there.
Jeff Scargill, a research astrophysicist with NASA, admires the team's use of scientific method, but questions its results.
It's finding patterns.
That guy's an idiot. You know, I can't. You know, I can't listen to skeptic. It's like they did that. They did that on the CBS morning show. They have these pilots on, and then you have some skeptics saying, "So well, maybe they saw some kind of illusion they couldn't understand." Yeah. So anyway.
I got to ask about morphogenic resonance.
No, but I want Dave to finish his thesis about his blog. So go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
Yeah, well, quickly, so what Mark Bacuzzi at Windbridge has done is he's hooked up the regs to a machine learning algorithm.
Random. What is
random generator? Yeah. Okay. So the same thing that runs the Global Consciousness Project.
Okay. He's hooked it up to where? Wait, sorry. He hooked it up to where? He's hooked it up to
a machine learning algorithm that you would encounter on like a chatbot. So something that can talk back to you, like it's artificial intelligence. Basically, but machine learning would be more accurate, but artificial intelligence is what people call it. But it can basically, you can ask it a question, right? And then it generates an answer based on the inputs that are coming in from these random event generators, which are being triggered by the same kind of thing that the Global Consciousness Project is.
So you ask it a question, but does it understand what it's asking, or you're just getting a random result that synchronicity? Yeah,
exactly. So you would think that, right? Like if you ask a chatbot something, like you can get back answers that you're like, well, okay, that makes no sense. It can just be a bunch of garbled words. But what's weird about this system is that when it answers you, it makes sense. It's coherent to the answer, right? So that was what what was interesting about this one. He asked it what a UFO was.
Right.
And that's where the idea where it was, you know, that answer it came back with, that it was these like shadows of thought that were like haunting humanity. Right. And it was an actual coherent message to what UFOs are.
Amazing. I know. Where can people find that, listening to it on YouTube? And then we'll get back to Kim, who just showed up at his local Starbucks, which I appreciate, Kim. But yeah, where can we find your blog?
That would be davidmetcalf.wordpress.com. So
it's really interesting that we're using AI as oracles of
Right.
our collective subconscious.
Right. Well, and it actually, that one said that so when he asked it what its name was, it said it was Throne of the Sphinx. And it said it was from outside of Orion. So
that is so, maybe it's being controlled by ET intelligences though.
Right. Yeah. We don't know where Let's hear what Kim has to say though.
Okay, Kim, welcome back. How's your sound? I think he's looking for a good location somewhere in San Francisco. Wait, we don't hear you yet, Kim. Put your unmute. You know, we can also do this on Kim. Unmute. Let me just unmute you. Unmute. Lower left.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. What happened to you?
I have no idea. I tried everything. I tried all my other computers. I tried the line, other lines. I tried everything. And it says I'm connected. It says I'm connected, but
it's okay. Maybe the ETs were interfering with your message.
Maybe it's important. I don't know. But I think AI is the end game for these negative forces, actually.
Yeah. What do you mean by end game for them? Was it
to replace humanity?
Oh, yeah.
Well, we had talked about that before, Kim, with the AI, almost in the sense that people feel like they're channeling this technology, that it's almost like that's the wrong type of thing to be pushing through ourselves. Right?
Well, you know, Kim, that's what I wanted you to get to on the show is the messages you got from your ET experiences that you can deliver to the people listening. So do you want to just go to that or give us a little bit of a background on what the messages were that you got?
Yeah, it's a shame because there's so much more I wanted to get to, you know.
Oh, well, we can also do it, but tell us whatever you want. We're open. I have another like half hour or so or more. Let's just see how it goes. Okay. Yeah, tell us the story. Yeah.
Well, like I said, on the ship, the main concern and what that meeting was all about was humanity and the Earth. And the main thing that they kept repeating was the changeover. They kept talking about the changeover. And you know, we can call the changeover by many things, you know. I mean, end times, the ascension. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great. Yes.
Cool. Yeah. So this was the main subject of not only the meeting on board ship, but the year of interaction that I had after that meeting. Mm-hmm. And it was for me to kind of do my research and figure out for myself what that meant. I really didn't know what it was about, quite frankly, till maybe recently, like 2 or 3 years ago. I started to see that things were moving into a direction that didn't feel very good to me, and it was obvious what the changeover was going to be about. So,
but let me just ask you: was Tog your main teacher? Did he kind of like, did he telepathically communicate to you messages that you were to bring to the Earth?
Well, I tell you, for a week after the first contact experience, it was, I mean, it just was on my mind all the time. I really couldn't shake it at that point. But about a week after, his presence surrounded me day and night. And at that point, I started to getting this strong urge to automatic write. And whenever I would get that urge, I would stop, card, whatever. I would just start writing and see what came out. And so the changeover, he kept talking about the changeover. And that humanity was far more capable than we know. And that there was a force that was trying to keep us from knowing about this. In my estimation, I think AI is the end game. Possibly it's in some sort of a timeless time travel warp or something that they're, you know, completing these steps till we get there and using humanity for those steps until they don't need us anymore, practically, possibly. I don't know. I'm still kind of learning about all this stuff.
There's always been the archons, which have controlled, some people say. So this is just AI is just another level of archonic consciousness. But what did they tell you we could do to save ourselves? And I mean, did they give you stuff we could do now?
Yeah, to realize who we are, to realize our capabilities, and those capabilities would come through the heart, through love. I don't mean that as a romantic thing, but love is literal. It's a vibration or frequency that we have in us, and we can connect to it. You know, there's many ways we can do this. The one thing about it was that fighting wasn't going to be the thing. Unfortunately, the last year or two, I've been in fight mode. So I'm a little disconnected from spirit right now, but because I'm very angry about seeing what's going on right now. But like I said, yeah.
No, I'm just saying, what should we do? What do you suggest? What do they suggest we do? Being
still, being quiet, same old stuff. That's the way that we can reconnect. They're not going to come down and help us. We got to go up to join them. That's the basic.
And I have to ask, Kim, what are you angry about? I have to ask, like, specifically.
Well,
sounds like a divorce, if you ask me.
What am I angry about? Without getting political.
Right. No, you don't have to
get political.
No, it's so, you know, I don't want to get into a whole political discussion, but.
Well, no, I mean, it's really important what's angering you. I mean, it really is, if you mention it. So
I'm disappointed with how easy it is for those forces to lead humanity in a certain direction. Let's put it that way.
Right.
This last pandemic thing was too easy. It was too easy for them. You know, so.
But are you giving specific things from these beings that we're here to do? I mean, yeah, no one wants to be at war, but what are they telling you specifically?
You know, it's funny. The answers are so simple. It's not about doing any complicated things. Tog kept telling me that he was a part of our creation. That was one of the things he referred to too. That he had a hand in our creation, and that it was him that instilled the gift inside us. And it took me a long time to realize what that gift was. And it's so simple. And it was just love. That was basically it. To reconnect with everybody around in that higher vibration. It's a vibratory thing. Because this movement that's moving towards us, which he called the blue haze. He said this blue haze was increasing was coming at us with ever increasing speed. And he was on it. And so, the blue haze is a higher vibrational frequency, and we have to tune ourselves to that when it comes.
And how do we tune ourselves to it?
Connect with love. If you're in a good place, you're going to go to the next level. If you're not in a good place, you're going to stay here or go somewhere else that's worse. It's something that's been said many, many times. I know that. But this is really crucial right now. I think we're really moving into this. It's a cosmic thing. It's a cosmic thing.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
That it would happen no matter what. Everybody's got to go through it. Everybody's got to go through it.
Is there a time frame that this is going to come down?
I think within the next 10 years. That's my feeling on it. That's my intuitive. It could be a little longer. I'm not quite sure. So.
But let me also ask you, if these good ETs want us to be loved, there's these other ETs that are connecting to AI and manipulating us. So is there really a war beyond this plane that these civilizations or species are involved in, that we're just sort of like the, not bystanders, but the victims of, perhaps? I don't know.
Well, that's why we take the next level. We've been enslaved for so long. And you ask me why I get pissed off. Well, that's what I see going on now. It's another form of slavery, just trying to enslave everybody. It's funny, they talk about racism, and right under everybody's noses, they're enslaving every one of us. And are using racism and everything else to do that. People don't realize that. It's unbelievable that things are so obvious to me and no one else sees it. So maybe I'm in California and that's the problem.
Wait, so
I think everybody sees it, Kim, to be honest.
Well, not everyone sees it, Steve, because, you know, there's a lot of people just buy what they hear in the media, which is also manipulation.
Alan, can I just really quickly, one thing?
Yeah.
I think you might remember when the virus started, I had that vision of autocomplete, and I was saying that it was a way to cut down people's narratives. The autocomplete is what the AI can do, and
right.
Yeah.
But I want to hear more of what Tog, if he's like such an important part of the civilization, he must have more than just saying it's all love. I know that's the bottom line, but
very simplified. I realize that.
But so who is Tog? Talk about that aspect of your vision.
From what I'm aware of, he came from the Sirius star system. So,
and then are you seeing him? Are you having ongoing contact with him now?
I had not right now. I had ongoing contact almost every day for a while, and then it kind of tapered off for about a year, and then it totally shut down on me. So,
what was the nature of that contact? Would he show? How was contact being made?
It was more of a presence. I went to the same place every lucid experience, the same place, and it was another planet, and it was a watery planet. It seemed to have grassy mounds on it. We kind of sat on this grassy mound, and for the longest time I couldn't see him. And I think the message was that he wasn't form, he was energy or intent. And he let me see him one time, just one time. And that's where the sculpture came from. And I know it's kind of ironic, but I'm an artist, and I felt like once I saw him, I had to.
Yeah,
you know.
So you think so? He's Syrian, and would you actually go to that planet with him, or?
I don't know where the planet was. I don't know where the planet was.
Would you actually go there physically, wherever that was, or was it in your dream state? Or it's hard to say because it was so real.
You know, look at our senses, our 5D, our 5 sense reality. I mean, look at how limited that is. What do we have? 5 to 10% of our brain, our DNA shut down 90%. I mean, look at all this stuff. And if we were awakened, like when we move into this wave of higher vibrational energy, those things I believe will be turned on. So it matters.
The higher senses, the higher.
And it matters where we are at that time, because we'll be that. If you're thinking bad things, you're going to be that. If you're thinking good things, you're going to be that.
Well, the higher senses are being turned on. More people are developing psychic awareness, remote viewing. I've been teaching. So many people are interested in remote viewing. But Dave, what do you comment on that? Because you've been studying all this, the whole field of paranormal and opening and awakening. What do you make of this, Dave?
I think that one, the AI point is interesting because that's what Whitley was told as well. In his contact with the master of the keep, was that AI was troublesome unless handled very carefully, and that it could easily become it could overshadow any benefit you can get from it. But the thing I was going to say too about this awakening, right? Like this is what Michael Gross was talking about as well. Like we were talking about earlier, this new narrative, this new story, which in the way that Michael's talking about it is the tool to prepare us for what Kim is talking about, which is this possible event horizon where we meet up with the actuality of that, right? Like, so if there's some sort of, movement of the cosmos towards us that's going to solidify our mind state, Michael is talking about a preparation for that with these new narratives, these new stories, with exactly what Kim said. We're more than the limited. We're more than the limited senses that we have, but we're even more than the expanded senses of psychism and the rest of it. There's an even greater kind of,
wake up into the next dream. Thanks, Steve. But, that's sort of the point I like to bring out in my book as well. But anyway, is there anything more, though, from Tog that you can give us? Because here you are meeting an extraterrestrial. I mean, so you're totally, they're out there and they're coming. So, and are they coming whether we wake up or not? Or...
Yeah, I guess you could say that. They're always going to be there. This council room, I kind of liken it to the Federation, the Galactic Alignment, or whatever you want to call it, any names. And they said there was many factions of it. That was just one small faction of it. So I'm not quite sure how it spiders out into its organization.
Because I just want to say there's a woman, Anjali, who I want on this program, who talks about the 7 different species that are coming here because we've run out of time. The clock has run out, and either we get it together or we don't. What are you saying, Steve? What are you saying, Steve?
Kim, one of the things we were talking about when you were gone is how media possibly has influenced the experiences. Like, so I'm just curious, do you have any inclination to entertain the idea that perhaps while your experience is real, the reporting of it is possibly influenced by media?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I was pretty clear. I was pretty clean when all this was happening. I was, I was quiet all day long. I mean, that's my work I was pretty focused. So,
that's why I tend to believe you as opposed to like these people who are spouting, their ET contacts and they think they have the answer. No, I think there's something. I mean, it's not like you had a choice. You were taken sort of up there. It wasn't like you were looking for this at all, Kim, right? You were just
not looking for it. And by the way, I don't want to be known as an ET guy or anything like that. Just a guy that's trying to, be centered and conscious, basically. And I feel like this was a gift. They let me remember it. It wasn't as if it was a gift. And also I want to say about the council meeting is that they said that they weren't all humanoid. They said they made themselves appear that way so I could focus more on the meeting. So some were human, not all.
Go ahead. But you say you're not in contact anymore. Could you be if you wanted to be?
I'm working on that again. Yeah, I'm working on that.
Why are you working on it all of a sudden? Do you feel like it's more urgent now to get there?
I feel like it's more urgent, and I want to be in the right place. I feel like I came here for this. When I was little, I used to dream of end of the world scenarios, and just countless over and over and over. And so I didn't understand that either. And I believe this is a part of what's going on.
Well, where are you now? You on the streets of San Francisco somewhere?
Well, right now I'm in Burlingame, so I don't know.
Where's that?
Yeah, it's south of the city. South of the city.
I see.
Yeah, thank God we got the masks lifted a little bit.
Oh, right. So what do you think of the government rollout about the topic? I know you're not a UFO guy, but everyone's talking about it now. What do you think?
Do you trust it? Do you trust this rollout?
No, we were talking about how the government's trying to control the narrative and the media is trying to control the narrative. But I think there's something, if you read below the surface, that is happening.
You always have to read below the surface with these guys. It's either going to be they're either going to tell us it's drones and it's nothing much, or if they roll out something that's really big, I'm still suspicious because I'm saying, okay, what are they rolling out something big? So we look out over here, so we're not looking out over there. Perhaps these tribunals, or I don't even know if that's going to happen, but perhaps if the let's say globalists for now. I don't want to get myself in trouble.
Right.
These guys start having their backs against the wall. They might roll this thing out even bigger, so no one notices as much. I don't know. I'm always, everybody's speculating.
Yeah, Steve.
I go along with you, Kim. I know what you're saying about that, and I kind of share that feeling about the virus, everything. But one of the questions that we were talking about before is, how personal do you think your cosmology is? Do you think it's interwoven with other experiences, cosmologies, or do you think your experience was a very personal cosmology?
I just want to say, he said he came to this fresh. He wasn't around a lot of this stuff, so maybe if they appear to you because they make themselves more appealable, maybe there's a bigger cosmology also. I'm just adding to what Steve said.
Do you find yourself connected with the rest of the, and this is something we talk about in general. Do you find yourself connected to the greater cosmology, or how personal is your cosmology? Just, we're stepping outside the box. We try to figure this out. So if you could maybe speak to that a little.
Good.
I'm not quite sure I understand. Is my filter filtering more than it should be? Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yes.
Well, I think he's asking if you resonate with what other experiencers talk about.
Oh, that's good.
In terms of your experience with Tog and this, do you feel like it fits within something that other people are experiencing? Like, are there other people that are accessing that place, or possibly, you know, there's folks who describe like a school, right? Like where they're a bunch of people that they've seen, sometimes even where they meet them, right? Like on like the earth, where they're walking and they'll meet somebody that they saw in their experience. So, you know, do you have any feeling like that? Like, or is this more, do you think that do not have that kind of interlacing?
Well, I just want to say there are people I've heard who totally agree with what Kim's saying. This woman Anjali saying either we transcend or we don't, and this is like the time we have to come from that same love place. So that these are two people, Kim and this woman, who weren't into any of this stuff at all, who resonate with basically the same thing. Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the way that I was thinking of the question, it wasn't even a matter of like reality of it, more of like, because it could, I mean, you know, like Whitley's visitors visit Whitley, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, they're not like they're not going out to other people in the same way that, like,
they might be. We don't know. They might be going out to other people.
Yeah, there's so many layers. That's the thing.
That's what we're asking, right?
Yeah. Well, I guess you could say it's personal. I never saw a being like that before in my life when I saw it. But like I said, there's outside this reality, there's so many layers. It's just, and I don't know if that's personal or that's just the way it is. I tend to get.
Yeah, go ahead. You tend to get what? Sorry.
I tend to think it's just the way it is. You know, there's just a lot of different realities. As a matter of fact, there's infinite realities. That's the way I look at it.
You see, I think that's a really good point, because the media tries to make it all one thing. Like they're presenting like a new television series for this is the ETs. And it's not like that at all. This is a distortion through media. I agree with you, Steve, about something that can't be put into a box or even on a computer screen or even in our mind. So we have to wake up. Yeah, that's part of the AI stuff, is the conditioning through media. And I think I trust that's what over media. What? Yes, Steve, what's that?
So that's where art comes in, Kim, right? Art allows us a different communication. It's a new vernacular. It's a different language. So maybe you want to talk about your art and how that communicates.
But I just want to say that's also a medium or media that we're getting, maybe in a more personal way. But yeah, talk about your art as it kind of converges with this. Yeah.
Well, you know, when I got cut off, I said that my art, I wasn't talented, you know, and I still don't have the talent. And I can see when I try to create for my work out of my personality, I can see it's not very impressive, I have to say. It's a spiritual thing for me. It's about letting go totally of myself. So I can do something bigger than my personality. And so all my work is about letting go. It's about surrendering. And if I'm not in that space, I can't create. So I have to be very still, very quiet for very long periods of time. And so I consider my work not me, not coming from me, but a gift that's given me.
So how did your work change in this whole thing that happened to you? How did it shift your reality?
Well, first of all, I kind of stopped doing the work after that. I was just kind of like numbed out and trying to figure out what the heck was going on. And then I got into music a little bit, and that was a whole different medium. So it was kind of like that was personal, because I really enjoyed music. So it kind of took over, and now I'm kind of getting back into it. I want to finish all the works that's half finished. And I hate to say it, but I came down with Lyme a number of years ago. So it put me in bed horizontal for a long time. And I kind of made a decision, if I ever am capable again of creating, I want to finish up all my work. And that's one of the reasons I put out the book on Tog, because I had written the original manuscript in the 90s. I wrote it up. Most of what's in there is from what I wrote decades ago. So it's a little introductory in that it's what I went through that introduced me to this thing. And so I lost my.
But did your art change after that experience totally? I mean, did it?
It became harder. It became harder for me. Yeah.
Harder to do.
Pardon me?
It became harder to create, you're saying?
Yeah, it became harder for me to create. Almost as if that was what I was supposed to do and that was it, you know. So
right.
So then I went on to do stuff I like to do.
Well, I want to show this picture that we showed before. Do you see that on your screen? The hybrid?
Yeah, I see it.
Now you didn't talk about hybrids, but where does this image come from?
I had about 4 or 5 lucid dreams with hybrids, and we were in the same place, and this is where we were gathering together. There was like maybe half a dozen at a time when I saw them. This is one of the versions.
But talk about what you mean by hybrids, because everyone has a different understanding of that. What were they for you? Hybrids of who? Of what?
I'm not sure if that's the right description for it, because I don't know if it was genetically altered with humans or not, but this is what I saw. They were elongated. They all had elongated heads. I know that's demonized a lot in history right now. But
did you get a communication from these beings?
No, we're just hanging out. That was
what does that mean? Do you feel stuff from them? I mean,
a lot of love. Yeah, most of these experiencers were very, very love oriented. The council room was the most loving atmosphere I've ever experienced, actually. So,
are you calling them hybrids because they look half human, half alien, or did they say they were hybrids?
No, that is personal. I just call them that because they look kind of humanoid to me.
Now, you said you did this. Yeah, go ahead, Steve. Yeah, go ahead.
Kim, I'm just curious. Tog, the name Tog, the word Tog, speaks of perhaps non-English language, and I'm just curious. Have any other words came through that are not of common vernacular? You know, do you get it in a different language or
good question,
like
Steve?
Yeah, that is a good question. No, not really. I didn't get a different language. That he just said that was what his name was, and I got the sense that it wasn't really his name. It was kind of like a throwaway, because when it came to me, or he said it, it was almost humorous in a way, like what serious. That was just an identity. It didn't matter what I called it. Didn't matter what.
So. Right now, I wanted to ask you a little bit about this picture because there's such fine detail here, like the veins on the skin. You saw that? Did you see this like subtleties of on their skin?
Yeah, pretty much. There's another drawing I had of a preliminary drawing of another type of being, the hybrid being that I sent you.
So yeah, I'll look for that. Yeah. But anyway, I think, oops, not that. Oh, so anyway, I mean, so your message now, you've come forward at this time to give us the message that we really got to clean our act up. Is that?
Yeah, that's the message.
And it does start within, right? It does start.
That's where it starts. That's where it starts, yeah. And like I said, there's an energy or force that doesn't want us to know about this or what's going on right now. And it's doing its best to do it. And it's encouraging a way that it's getting so extreme, because I think they might be getting desperate. You know,
Kim.
Yeah.
Oh wait.
I just want to ask Kim. Like a number of contactees have said that the contact is made because of specifically the nuclear threat. I'm just wondering if that came into your communications.
No, not really.
Wait, you were saying something there about what were you just saying, Kim? About, you know, bringing the message out now and
I think I was repeating myself, but just about our capabilities, maybe.
Yeah. So this other force is stopping us down because we're getting closer to a threshold of awakening.
Yes, and I know a lot of people are saying the same thing right now, but when I got these messages, I had no idea what was going on. You know, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know it was about right now. So
right. So are these these kind of negative forces, if we want to put it that way, are they being stopped by Tog and his people? Or, I mean, what's that relationship like?
I don't think they can interfere. I think we've got to do it on our own. So
I see. And the best way to do that is just to love everyone.
Yeah, and a lot of these communications seem to be intercommunications, you know, within. And so I think they're doing it on more and more with more and more people. You know, it's funny, the council meeting was long, and I wish I could have gotten into detail about it because there's a lot of interesting aspects of it.
Oh, well, give us a little interesting aspect. We have a little time. Go ahead.
I mentioned that C symbol that was in the hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
And they said that it stood for everything, and it depended on the intention that was put into them when they were created and now received, so they could use one symbol. And in that context, I think they were, you know, they're hooking into some unified field that everybody is in touch with. Now, I don't know if that was technological. I tend to think it wasn't technological because the surroundings didn't have any controls or any of this stuff. You know, they weren't punching buttons or any of that. They were all connected. And so, and I think that field had a lot to do with the same energy that was in the hieroglyphics. They were all connected to the same field, just like telepathy. And I don't know if it was like an empathic thing, but somehow they were connecting to the oneness that we're all connected to. And perhaps
what? Yeah, no.
Perhaps it was evolutionary, or perhaps it was something on the ship. I'm not quite sure.
So with the hieroglyphic, like it was imprinted with the intention itself. Like the letter actually had instead of reading it, right? Like you would empathically absorb what. That's interesting. That's
exactly.
Interesting.
So I think it was kind of more heart-based, or right brain and left brain. So,
you know, one of the things that this reminds me of is Stephen Halpern talks about the being taught by I forget the name of the group. It was like the Ogata or something like that that had contacted him to teach him how to do music, and they taught him that you imprinted the music with your intention at the time. Very similar to what you're describing with the writing, you know. Yeah. And that's the way when he's composing his music, he's actually imprinting that feeling on it, and that he's got to be in the right space in order to create that sound and have that, you know, have the listener then be able to understand it in that way too. So I think that's really interesting that you experienced that with the hieroglyphic.
Right. And Kim, I'm just going to bring up, you know, I always like to bring up Duchamp and his idea of the creative act. And that's a magical act too, in a way. What is your opinion on magic in this kind of worldview?
What do you mean by magic? Do you mean trickery, or do you mean like real manifestations, Steve?
No, actual magic, you know, because a sigil, when you talk about this C and stuff, what Dave talks about energizing the sigil and the symbol, it becomes a sigil. And I'm just curious if magic falls into your worldview at all. Just curious.
Not really. I just know that, you know, those more evolved beings are doing things that we consider magic, but I don't know.
Right. But let me ask you about Tog. Essentially, when you're with him or were with him, did you felt love, but did you feel like a vibration, a field? Like was it like an initiation in a sense for you being with him?
It was a physical feeling. Yeah, it really was a physical feeling, a presence that wasn't just, it was physical, tangible. Yeah. So
it sort of sounds like Mark Sims' Tejbar experience. Did you ever hear Mark Sims talk?
No.
Oh, this being came to Mark and actually merged with him, but he also had, you know, maybe, I don't think it was the same being. There's probably billions of beings out there, but it was a very high evolutionary being that was here to wake him up too. So in a way, Tog is sort of your teacher. It's like a spiritual teacher in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so you reference that as part of your awakening, and before that, you didn't have the same kind of spiritual understanding about the world. Was that different?
Well, I was always kind of, you know, I leaned in that direction. That was I wanted to know what we are. Always wanted to know that. and what our capabilities were. But I don't know. I wasn't putting it into an ET perspective. So
well, so talk a little bit what about Tog said about the creation of humanity and the cycles of civilization and the Babylonians and the Egyptians. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, the first place I went to was, of course, the Sumerian texts. I mean, that was the most obvious at the time. There's more now that you can research than ever, but back then it was the Sumerian texts, and I kind of zeroed it in on Enki. It seemed like he was the same presence as Enki, and and in the Egyptian text, maybe Ta, which is interesting because the sound of Ta is similar to Ta, and Thoth as well. So.
What did you discover in those texts that was new to you, like the Babylonian and Egyptian? What did
I never had even thought that man was created. I had no idea about that stuff. That was what intrigued me more than anything, was the mention that he was our creator. I thought it was a little, presumptuous, but he's a boss.
Well, what did you discover now overall? I mean, like as far as the whole context of these previous civilizations and what we have to learn from the past, and as we take that into a new time, what can you kind of tell us about
it's hard to, history is so blurred, it's hard to kind of, just like now we're speculating, the remnants of what we have is so limited. But the most important thing I think I got out of it was cycles, how everything's cyclical. And how we're just moving into the end of another age and the beginning of another cycle. So that's kind of the main thing I got from this.
No, I think that's really important because obviously we are. Yeah. Steve, Steve? Yeah, Steve? Yeah, Steve.
Yeah. So two things. I always say when we talk about cycles, we talk about, I like to think of it as wheels within wheels. Just to because it's the but Enke, when you were talking about Tog and you said, oh, it wasn't his real name and he was kind of just telling you that made me immediately think, okay, is Tog some sort of trickster? And when you mentioned Enki's a trickster and Thoth is a trickster traditionally. So Tog, did you feel that did you feel perhaps that Tog was I don't want to use the word duplicitous, but do you feel like there was an agenda behind the agenda, or do you think he was being very straightforward with you? Or do you think that possibly he was giving you what was needed at the time?
Yeah, it's a good one. Well, he made it clear that he wasn't God, that he was imperfect. So he wasn't like the ultimate. And also the feeling I got, and I think that's really important these days with what we're going through and seeing because of the deception. We have to really feel what's going on too with our hearts.
Right. Agreed.
Coming from love or it's not. So discernment is part of the spiritual path, and we have to learn that too. I hate to kind of focus on polarity consciousness because we're going through that right now with the dark and light, but it's good to be discerning. So, because we all want peace, and there's those out there that don't want us to have peace. So I think it's good that we know about that.
But you're saying it's all going to be coming down pretty soon, this kind of intensity of conflict between those that want to perpetuate, or maybe it's happening right now in front of us, those that want to go into the new age or the new era, and those that want to hold on to the past separation or duality.
Yeah.
And so your message on what each of us can do is just, you're saying love.
Yeah, it's pretty simple and trite. I know, but that's the deal.
No, but is that, and that's what these beings on these other planes are also emanating? I mean,
did Tog specifically mention binaries?
What does that mean, Steve?
Or star systems?
No, you mentioned the binary kind of mode of thought that we're in. You mentioned that before.
Duality.
Yeah, duality. So did Tog specifically mention that kind of concept, or is that
the polarity consciousness?
Yeah.
God, I don't think he mentioned. It's funny. I'm the translator. I'm the messenger. Like I said, my personality, my brain doesn't work really great, but I translate through the heart. And I think that's what the future is. We have to like evolve through the heart. Those that are more evolved are just closer to center. They're, you know, and they're closer to that feeling. So.
Wait. Yeah, one more question I want to ask you, because when we could pick up this conversation another time, and you could be part. I'm inviting you to be part of a bigger discussion as we talk to other people. If this we call this an ET roundtable, so you're welcome to join. Like next week, this woman Barbara Lamb wrote an ET children's book, so she wanted to be on the show. I said, okay, but you know, you talked about automatic writing, and were you sort of like getting these downloads when you started to automatically write these messages from Tog?
Yeah, it's like a burn. It's like if I don't do it, it's painful. It's very painful.
And that has stopped, or can you go back into that state and keep?
Yeah, it stopped. Like a door was shut.
What did you do? Did you get drunk or something? No, what did you do to make it stop?
I have another choice, but yeah. When it stopped, I thought it was for my own learning. I just thought this must be for me to launch me, you know, to launch pad into my own learning, because it did set me on a path that I wanted to know everything that was going on. I wanted to know how things work. That's why I'm kind of, the last few years, I've been really involved with this reality here we call, you know.
Right.
But
did it give you the opportunity to drop into yourself and kind of get your own wisdom and your own love and your own higher consciousness?
It made me smarter, but I feel like I'm more disconnected now, that I have to reconnect, you know.
And how are you going to do that? Don't be hard on yourself. Do what?
Get back on to my work so I can be quiet.
Yeah, Kim, we were talking before about, I mentioned Colin Wilson's The Outsider, and how these experiences can make people feel disconnected, like you just noticed. Do you feel you're a little bit more outside of, let's say, consensual reality at this point?
Yeah.
How do you intersect with?
Yeah, perfect, Steve, because this reality seems like, I feel like I'm in a dream right now for some reason. This world seems kind of dreamlike. So, but I was confused for a while after that. And I just feel like I need to get back to that. So,
well, are you still working with your dreams in the same way you were before?
Just starting up again. Yes. The interesting thing is, with this Wi-Fi and all going on now, the more that kept up, the more I was blocked. And I don't know if that's like a technological thing, but I feel like my frequencies are blocked. So I'm going to.
Do you believe that's part of the plan? Do you think that's part of a plan? You do. Right, sure.
We're going to say, so you're going to do what? Are you going to get out of the city, or what are you going to do?
I don't know if you can get away from it with Musk throwing up all the satellites up there. I mean, you know, they're going to put a net over us pretty soon. But anyway, I'm going to reconnect. I think love can cut through anything. So I'm going to try to reconnect with that.
Well, don't try. Just be it. Just be that force.
Yeah, you're right about that.
And talk to other people. You know, Jonathan here in Sedona is a great guy. He's a great, really great guy who comes from that place. And all the people I know that you know are coming from a pretty high place.
Yeah.
Kim, I have a question. Kim, do you have a network in San Francisco that you communicate with? Like, who do you, like, you met Alan somehow, but do you have a network? Is there a community, perhaps a local community of contactees or people you can, even not contactees, who have, you communicate with, you feel comfortable with?
Yeah, I do have a group, like, but I have to admit, my nerves are kind of shot right now because of the Lyme. So I have I have kind of social anxiety.
Oh,
for me to be around people. I'm really a recluse is what I am.
You should look into some Edgar Casey medicine stuff. There's something called the wet cell, which actually helps with Lyme. There's special solutions. And I also know some great ET community people up in the Bay Area. Geraldine Orozco is really good. And
is this Wi-Fi stuff? It's screwing me up. I'm so sensitized to it.
Is the Wi-Fi activating the Lyme?
And it activates the Lyme. Yeah, the spirochetes go nuts. They think they're being attacked, so they start proliferating. I get around electricity and it just drives me nuts.
So that's what happened before when your computer shut down, right? And all that.
No, that's a mystery. I have no idea. Everything is connected. It says it's working, it's just not working. So,
have you done float tanks at all, Kim?
That's a good point.
Lucid dreaming or anything? Float tanks?
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, you should do it.
I'll think about that. Yeah, thanks, Steve.
Hey, does Faustin have one? Steve, does Faustin have one in the Bay Area?
Faustin has one. I could connect them if you'd like. Yeah.
Okay.
And just you're familiar with Faraday cages, of course, just as a possible solution. But when you're in your dream state, it's lucid dreaming, right? I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And how tangible does that dream state feel? Can you talk about the communication in the dream state and the tangibility of it, and the, let's say, the feeling of otherness that possibly is you experience in that other realm? Can you just the qualities of it, if you can explain that a little bit or expand on that a little bit? Thank you, Kim.
Oh, sure, Steve. Yeah. Well, it's hyperreal. That's the word I can use. Best word I can use is hyperreal. Maybe that's why I'm a realist, but it's just so. The detail, it's and the colors. The colors are much more pronounced. It's just like colors I'd never seen before. So,
is it a dimensional shift? Do you believe?
Yeah, God, I don't know. I never thought about that.
Like a hyperdimension, comes into it. When you talk about hypercolors, and of course, one of the things that I've always curious about is hypercolors. John Keel's The Seventh Tower, Crowley's The Purple Beyond Purple, butterflies are the perception of hummingbirds seeing beyond the normal spectrum, and like you spoke about before. So the hyperreal aspect, can you explain it a little bit? Colors, what happens?
Yeah, it's possible that is a dimension. Maybe that's the upper fourth dimension. Maybe that's what we're going to. I don't know. Maybe our mind is, we're totally in control of creation.
Can you paint those hypercolors? I mean, could you attempt to paint them?
That's what I try to do.
Oh, okay.
I'm very detail oriented, so that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, you have a technique. You were talking about your technique of using different colored dots, which I kind of found a little fascinating. Can you and it's in a way it's an outsider way of doing it. It's not super traditional, is it?
No.
So could you explain that in a bit, and why you do it and how you do it?
Well, when I use the white of the canvas, I don't use the color on the palette. And I noticed it when I looked at photographs up close, it was all primary colors. And so when I just use, like I said, when I mix blue and yellow, I make green. I keep doing mists and mists and mists. So the white shows through the canvas, and that gives it the three-dimensionality,
Nice.
Perspective. Yeah, and it's a machine that no one uses anymore. No one uses that machine. It's very hard to use.
But maybe that's your mission, is to bring this message in through art, as opposed to really even talking about it. So that's what we want to see here.
I think you're right.
And Kim, I have a tendency to read quotes during these things. So I'm going to read Flaubert. Language is like a cracked kettle on which we beat out tunes for bears to dance to, while all the time we long to move the stars to pity. So language is a cracked kettle, right?
That's good. Yeah. Poetry always says it. No, thank you. No, but Kim, I definitely would like to have you back on the show. And I think it's all perfect, because I think you've just gotten people very interested. And we want to see your art. We are all encouraging you. And
what's the website, Kim?
It's kimedwardblack.com.
kimedwardblack.com.
Yeah.
And is what's up there? Is it subdivided, or are your alien paintings? Are they prominent?
Yeah, there's some otherworldly stuff on there. Some I've done which are copyrighted. I couldn't put on there. They wouldn't let me put it on there. But yeah, most of it's up there. So yeah, no, you're right, Alan. My work is what I'm most comfortable with, verbalizing.
Your work is the real message. Like, yeah, beyond words, it's like it's a transmission, just like that seed device. I think your work, I think that's what you're really here to do. That's just what I get. And people will get the transmission of love or higher consciousness.
Not from here, but yeah. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Like
Kim, one more question.
Yeah.
One more. Is there any medium that you can imagine that you would like to use in your art? Like a medium, even if it's a fantastic medium, what would your dream artwork be, let's say? Or what would you like to achieve with your art? And is there a medium you can think of? Like the aliens have these weird buildings with the white and stuff. Can you see yourself, if you had the like your dream of the medium that you would use in your art, if possible?
Good question, Steve.
Yeah, I'd like to do is have a spiritual medium to where it doesn't take so much time to create it, because God, it takes a lot of time to do that stuff. And I'm tired of 3D. I want to think of it and have it happen. You know?
I was a 3D animator, Kim, and an illustrator. What? With in San Francisco a bit. So yeah.
But you know, even though it's taking time to do your art, there's like a kind of infusion of energy and intent within the details. So no detail is wasted. It brings us deeper.
And you're so right, because it was a meditation. It was a process to where I could be still and quiet for these things to come through. And I think that's why I chose that somewhere.
Maybe you should go out to the country, just start doing your art, and then bring it out to the world. We'll do some more shows, or come here.
Kim, I'm looking at your. Sorry, Alan.
No, go ahead.
I'm looking at your website and I see artist statements, conceptual nudes, portraits, but I don't see the alien stuff. Where would I find it on your website?
Probably on portraits. I think portraits would have it. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So before Dave, any comments from with this conversation? Because I always appreciate your comments.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I think this has been a really fruitful discussion of the experience itself. I think, Kim, you're a good ambassador for that. You know what you're trying to do, and then and the especially the artwork and that. You know, I think that I find it interesting, the dry spell. You know, that kind of like, it's almost like a long night of the soul, or dark night of the soul after this experience. But I think that, like Alan's saying, I mean, the artwork is incredible, and it really does resonate, that talking about the luminosity of it and that. But I think it has a resonance beyond just the visual, so I'm excited to see what comes out, and what comes through this next step.
Right. So don't feel frustrated, Kim.
Have you illustrated?
One second, Steve. No, I'm just saying, I think you've been like sitting and now incubating, and it's all coming out in the time it's supposed to. That's my feeling.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Yeah. Good. Waited 20, 30 years to do it.
Well, whatever. Here we are.
Have you illustrated the inside of the craft, Kim? Have you illustrated the inside of the craft?
I tell you, it would be
Have you illustrated the inside of the craft?
Yeah, he got it. Steve, he got it. Yeah.
It would be very difficult because, like I told you, there was no right angles or hard lines. And there was no real colors until there was 4 other individuals that came into the room. They were wearing different uniforms. So that was the only color involved with the whole.
What did their uniforms look like?
Burgundy. And they looked just like Star Trek.
Really?
I said that. It looks like Star Trek. And he said, well, where do you think Gene Roddenberry got it from?
Really? Did they say that? That's funny.
He said there's many more making the journey. You're not the only one. He said there's a lot more and more.
And that's interesting, going back to the question of other people entering the space in this conversation, because Gene Roddenberry actually was in contact with stuff. I mean, yeah, the 9 and him working with Buharik and that. So that's a
Buharik? Oh, right.
Yeah. Gene Roddenberry wasn't
very important.
Yeah, I mean, he was incredibly connected to a lot of work with non-human intelligence, isn't that? So I think that that's an interesting comment, you know, which seems kind of funny on the outset, but actually has some resonance with what Gene actually was doing. So,
but do we have to be a little suspect that it didn't influence our visions also, right?
Possible.
All right.
Good. Yeah, good.
I mean, I don't know, either that or it's really what they're wearing. I mean, who knows?
They had a specific purpose, though. They weren't there just walking around. So,
or are they wearing it for us to like feel like we could identify? I mean, these are all great questions. No one has the right answer because there is no answer. Right. They're only at this point in our education. Wait, Steve, 1 second. Evolution. All we can ask are the questions and put the pieces together. And that, so we can't expect government to tell us what's real because they don't know, because not even those experiencing the phenomena really know. So it's a really exciting mystery that we are actually in the middle of. I think it's a very exciting time to be here and to keep asking those questions. That's why we'll be doing this every week pretty much. And so, Steve, you were going to say something. You were mouth was
curious,
open.
Kim, you know, you're talking about how you feel sort of afflicted by the field of electricity and things like that. Does the field of media, the saturation of media these days, do you have any thoughts on that? Does that kind of, I see them as the same thing, the field of frequency and electricity around us and the field of media. They're very akin for me. And I'm wondering, do you not have that feeling?
Oh, it bothers me. I can't be around it. You know, I know what they're doing. I don't need to keep focusing on it, but when I'm around it, it really bothers me.
Well, maybe your experiences have made you ultra sensitive in a good way, because we don't need to be around that. That's just mind stuff. So maybe it's
what they're doing. I can see their intentions, you know, and it's just like they're just putting the shackles on everybody, you know, and it's like sometimes I want to be Kevin McCarthy in the streets yelling, you know, they're here, you know, so.
So curse or gift, Kim, curse or gift?
What's that, Steve?
Contact.
I'm saying it's a gift.
Okay. I think it is a gift. Kim, thank you very much for the time here. But don't worry about it. We'll do it again. I'm going to just show people a better close-up of this book here. There. It is Tog, Into the Changeover, Remembering Tog. And that's been your process of remembering this interaction with these beings.
Yes. Yeah. And thank you for having me, Alan. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no, I think it's important for all this information as much as we can to be out there and heard, because we're not going to hear this on the nightly news. So we need to hear it in these sort of channels. So thank you.
Take as many with us as we can.
Yeah.
You know.
So Dave, where can we find you these days? Anything you're working on?
Yeah, what am I doing? I don't even know. They're probably. I will be working on some stuff with the Windbridge Institute. I will be participating in a kind of Q&A discussion about afterlife as a therapeutic modality with Patricia Pearson, who works up in Canada and kind of addresses those issues. So that'll be coming up. I'll be doing that soon, and I think that'll be released by the end of the month, and it should be pretty interesting. And then outside of that, I've just been, really fascinated by the mediation of this current UFO thing. So
yeah, we have to keep talking about the mediation just to keep people.
I think I brought that word into the fucking discourse.
Okay,
by the way.
Steve, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for mediating.
I'm working with the Citizens for a Free America, and they're an anti-vax, anti-mask group. They meet on 83rd Street at the Uptown Republican Club. They do actions in New York City. Citizens for a Free America. I also work with the Queens County Republican Patriot Party. trying to make sure that everybody's vote counts and bringing people, normal citizens, into low-level seats. So it's not a top-down government, it's a bottom-up government. And I think it's important for people to get involved, not only on the spiritual level, but on the physical level doing work.
I can't believe I'm talking to a Republican. That's okay.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate it. And Dave and Alan, as usual, thanks.
We're all one.
All right. And I'm working on my book right there, Making Contact, Interviews, and Media. Yeah, me and Steve don't agree on everything or practically anything, but that's okay. Thanks, Kim. KimEdwardBlack.com, Remembering Tog, and we're going to be doing this probably next week, same time, same channel, same YouTube. Thanks for the great comments on YouTube. Yeah, really good. People sending you, thank you, Kim. Mary says that. So, yeah.
Oh, everybody, humanity, plus humanity, and all you guys. So,
thanks for taking time to leave your house and continue the broadcast.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Dave.